When Nintendo announced the arrival of the NES Classic in 2016, it promised to tickle all of our nostalgia bones, and scalpers all over were elated. When Nintendo announced they would re-release the NES Classic in 2018, it was finally my chance to score one. Now that I have, it's time to play through some classic titles I've missed out on and answer the question, was it worth all the hype? Let's find out. The Nintendo Entertainment System released in North America in 1985, just a few years before I was released in North America in 1987. Some of my earliest memories involve watching my father and older brother playing these odd black and gray rectangles attached to an even stranger gray box. It was all so exciting with flashing lights and digital sounds, but I never really had a grasp on what exactly was going on. The day came my older brother asked me if I wanted to play, and I was finally able to get my hands on this palm-destroying controller for myself. It was to play as this pixelated portly green Italian on Super Mario Bros. And it probably went just like this. Even still, my love of gaming was cemented early on by the NES, though I never got to actually spend much time with it. As with many families in the early 90s, I had to share this console with my siblings and my dad, and we didn't have a large library of games to play at that. I've missed out on many titles and franchises that I've heard over the years are must-have experiences to even consider yourself a serious gamer. Now, I know what you're saying, you can always just emulate them, and I know there's classic games on the Virtual Console for Wii, but I just don't feel I could have gotten the whole experience without a proper controller. And holding the Wiimote sideways just feels wrong. That brings us to today. With my NES Classic by my side, my aim for this video series is to try these games for the first time, let you know what I liked, what I didn't, and if I would recommend them to other first-timers in 2018. With all that said, let's get started with Metroid. The only thing I've known about Metroid is the playable character Samus. She looks badass, has a sweet arm cannon, and there's aliens? Look, as a filthy casual, the only time I've controlled this character has been on Super Smash Bros. I admit I should have probably done a bit of research, but this way it will truly be a new gaming experience. The title screen offers little information as to what's ahead, only briefly stating that I'm ordered to defeat the Metroid of an alien planet. Now, I'm sure there was a bit more to be learned from the games manual, and there is a link provided within the NES Classic for all the games manuals. However, I wanted to approach this as if I had just found this cartridge in the wild without its box or manual, as I'm sure many of you have. In this case, I'm glad I'm not being forced to sit through some expositional dump we've all been groomed to expect nowadays. We can't waste any time, as the game states this is an emergency. The game starts up right away as I phase in as the aforementioned Samus. Aran? Ugh. Immediately I'm met with this dark atmosphere with a stark black background and cool blue structures. There's a sense of uneasiness as a jagged ceiling imposes into the frame, giving me feelings of claustrophobia. Where am I? A cave? A bunker? Well, no time to dwell on this as these pissed off pointy aliens are headed right for me. I get a chance to test my blaster to dispatch these foes, and look at that, I can point it up. Another thing I notice is that neither side of the frame is closed off, and I get to decide which way to go. I start off towards the right, as many years of Mario has taught me the goal must be that way. Enemies started dropping from above, and I'm quickly able to dispatch them with a couple upward blasts. One even leaves behind a colorful pulsating dot, and as I jump to meet it, I find out it's a health power-up. But wait, that means the game starts you off without full health. I'll soon learn the max is 99, but you start with 30? Coming across my first door, I use the only tool available to me and quickly learn blasting the shit out of doors is the key to move forward. Here comes more spikies, and well, I guess ducking and shooting is out of the question, so it's best just to avoid these as they pack a punch and drain my already dwindling health reserves. It's not long before I come across a section of terrain I'm not equipped to pass. The game is telling me this will not be a linear action adventure, and exploring for the solution will be the only way to progress. Heading back to the left, avoiding the respawning enemies where possible, and past my original starting point, I come across another obstacle that I can now jump across. I gotta say now, the jumping is satisfying. I'm able to control my movement mid-air, and it's nice and floaty with the alien gravity helping to instill the otherworldly feeling along with the enemies and environment. I pick up a strange orb, some fanfare plays, and I'm not exactly sure what just happened, but the music played, so this is good. The way forward from here is blocked off, and heading back right, I learned I'm not able to make it up back the way I came, and we've learned ducking is out of the question, so what the Oh, I can tuck and roll now. This is awesome! Now, I'm able to revisit where I was unable to pass before and move on. This leads way to a few new enemy types and a vertical shaft filled with small platforms to savor all the satisfying jumping. Now I come across some red hedgehogs here, and not only do they take more shots to destroy, they deal a lot more damage, and unless I'm in just the right spot on another platform to shoot them, I just need to try and avoid them all the while the health meter beeps away as a reminder of impending doom. One slip and I get to witness the complete disintegration of our hero, and I'm met with a game over screen. The first of many, I'm sure. To continue from here starts me back at the beginning, leaving me to crawl all the way back to where I was before, only to be killed again as I become overwhelmed with enemies. This time I break out a notepad, write down the password, restart the system, enter the game, enter the password, and guess where it starts me? I'll be here a while, so let's move on with the review, and much like the broccoli you push around the plate, let's get it out of the way and start with... For starters, the whole layout of the game is a bit confusing at first. There is no clear destination, waypoints, or even a map. This isn't helped at all by the fact that so many areas resemble the last. It's all too easy to forget which shaft or room I'm currently in, and many paths result in a dead end, leaving you to fight your way back through the respawning enemies you just dealt with. I know I could easily look up a map now, but I have to imagine the frustration kids must have had trying to figure this out without just drawing their own map and retracing their steps from room to room while trying to stay alive in the process. This leads me to my next point. There is a steep difficulty curve at play here. When the game overwhelms you with enemies, which it will in short order, you feel helpless as you respawn back at the start only to crawl back through and do it all over again. Plenty of times I ended up in an area that I just didn't feel prepared for, either without the proper upgrades or health, and making my way back to certain death was a daunting task. Luckily, you keep your upgrades when this happens, but they certainly don't help you out in the health department, leaving you to grind through defeating baddies hoping for drops. The password system is a waste of time and paper, so if you don't have to leave your game, I wouldn't bother. Luckily, the NES Classic has save states available. Does it feel cheap to use them? Of course! But I don't have all the time to grind through these games like I would have as a kid, so you bet your ass I'm using every modern advancement to help me out. In regards to the enemies that will be draining your health the entire game, there are only about 3 or 4 different movement types they exhibit, and much like the rooms, they just feel like palette swaps from one to another. They overwhelm you at times by sheer number alone, and if you back up too far to defeat one and move forward, it's respawned again. Most of the enemies you encounter are always somehow just out of blaster reach on the ground, leaving you to move around to defeat them creatively, which causes the respawning issue more times than I care to count. In a game where I'm asked to defeat everything from the title screen, I find it more convenient to run through and avoid as many as possible, if anything just to save time and get back to exploring. This is a cause for unsatisfying combat at times, which is a shame when you're wearing badass space armor with a fucking cannon for an arm. Let's move on with the refreshing palate cleanser. Along with your badass space armor, you'll come across some equally badass power-ups. Though few and far between, these are the items that gave me a true sense of progression in my playthrough and kept me pressing on looking for the next one around the corner. The game really opens up once you find the bomb ability. Now you can make your way back to those dead ends, and thankfully there is no limit, so feel free to experiment and bomb everything. The pink armor improves your durability to help you stay alive a while longer, and look sexier while doing so. The high jump upgrade helps you jump higher. And let's not forget the greatest upgrade in the entire game, the screw attack. Making my way back up the numerous shafts with this absolute joy of spinning death, laying waste to every enemy on my path is just so... Even after you've collected the main upgrades, there are still a few missile upgrades and energy tanks to find that are absolutely necessary to even attempt taking on the mini-bosses and final area. Collecting these were very rewarding and a great payoff for exploration and experimentation with my bombs. I briefly mentioned the surroundings and atmosphere in the first impressions portion, but I must reiterate here that I really grew to like this space. Yes, I know I said it's confusing at first, but once you die about 100 times and you retrace your path, you get pretty familiar with the surroundings, and it does a great job creating a sci-fi horror atmosphere with 80s 8-bit graphics. There are no hints to know what areas you can bomb or which secret paths you can take, you just have to spend time with it and experiment. I imagine this was great if it were one of the few games you had as a kid because you really can sink a lot of time into checking out every spot on the map. Everything is connected and I'm not just running from point A to point B or playing through a set of levels. I'm exploring in this terrifying alien space and I truly feel alone. It's all up to me to defeat the Metroid. More on that in my final thoughts. I saved the best for last in this portion of the video and you've been hearing it this whole time. The music. I love the music in this game. From startup, the title screen has these pulsating sound waves as if some alarm was sounding off from far away, and if left on the screen long enough, it will pick up into this magnificent shuffle like some twisted waltz propelling you towards the difficult task ahead. I was very excited to hit start and see what would come next. I was not let down. The immediately iconic theme that plays as Samus fades into existence seamlessly transitioned into the optimistic melody for the first area of the game that had me so pumped it actually took some of the sting out of the death cycle. I know I mentioned earlier that the layout of a lot of the areas felt too similar with only a palette swap in colors and textures. Well, it was the music that really defined the area and I knew I was about to walk into a shitstorm when I heard a change. These tunes will stick with me for weeks. I may just have to add a few of them to my regular playlist. Everything I mentioned before culminated into one of the most hectic and challenging final areas I believe I've ever experienced. The music is a stress-inducing chaotic mess, and it turns out they did have a couple more tricks up their sleeve in regards to enemy types, and here is where you meet the game's namesake, the pants-shittingly terrifying Metroid. The difficulty curve here just turned into a wall, and every last upgrade, ability, and skill you've earned along the way gets put to the test. The final battle against Mother Brain is a straight-up endurance test of your will and patience as you take damage straight away from entering the room, and it's next to impossible to avoid what's being thrown at you. When I reached the end credits, I dropped the sweat-covered controller and threw my hands in the air in a moment of genuine triumph. 31 years later, and I have done it. I've beaten Metroid. Now, would I recommend this to others who have no experience with the Metroid series? Absolutely. Although I think there are a few legitimate complaints to levy against the game, they got so much right with this one that they all seem to fall away as mere nitpicks when you complete it. And to imagine this is only the first one. There's no wonder why so many indie developers have taken inspiration from this game and that the term Metroidvania even exists. I feel blessed to have the opportunity to experience gaming history and I'm looking forward to tracking down the sequels and giving those a go. Thank you all for watching. I had a lot of fun with this one, and as mentioned before, this will be the start of a Classics Experience series. This game paired with Mario and Zelda on the NES Classic makes the price point worth it for me, though I'm sure there are still a few more gems on here to be unearthed. If you liked the video, you can do me a huge favor and hit that like button. If you disliked it, hit that button as well and let me know down in the comments what I can do to improve the upcoming content on this channel. And if you have a suggestion for the next game I should tackle on the NES Classic, go ahead and leave that comment down below as well. I'll be seeing you guys soon with another First Classic Experience. Bye-bye!